What
All
is it?
right, stream going back online. Let's hope the audio
What's the
doesn't
code?
crash this time.
Yeah, but what is it?
246.
Around the circle.
468.
Okay.
All right, remember, guys, at this point in time, there's a lot of people here, so I'm going to ask that everybody mutes their mic, does not have any side conversations whatsoever. Please let the hosts talk and explain their topics. If you wish to comment in the show, simply walk along this trail right here, and in the center here is where we'll go ahead and ask you if you have any questions. So, if everybody can continue to keep their mics muted,
Wait, Vivian.
unless they're in line. Thank you.
Well, yeah,
So you got.
I wasn't sure it worked. Two?
Once you.
Oh.
Yeah, once you do it, you'll teleport into a different room.
Oh.
Okay. 2,
So-
2457.
We're getting there, Sarah. Well, I don't know what else to do. Like that, I have to tell them the code, and there's no time.
I'm so confused.
So
Hey,
Charlie, try. Are you doing it?
Just mute your mic for a little bit. They're gonna be doing something. It's in the menu on the bottom left.
Charlie, it's 2, 4, 6, 8.
I
did it. I thought.
Stage for us
There's just a lot of anime characters. It's
if we absolutely need to, but that would require Lau being here.
Hey, Sarah.
Wait, Jesse.
Okay, I'm just gonna disable the stage, Charlie. So you should. I'm gonna push a button, and then you can just go.
Hey, I'm gonna ask you to please remove yourself from the stage now. Thank you. All right, thank you guys so very much for dealing with us and all our technical difficulties. The Endgame show will be starting here very shortly as your hosts come upon the stage. We ask that you keep your mics muted and do not talk whatsoever in this room. We will have a bunch of audio issues with all of these people here.
Jesse.
Come up here.
So, if you do have a question, there is a pathway here that you guys can go ahead and line up on, and we'll call you.
All right, I gotta start recording, and then we can go.
And here
Okay.
we go as we get
Could you
set up
deafen me?
for the recording of
What?
Endgame. Nomanda, did you see they want you to enable embedding on the stream for YouTube?
Yeah, I enabled it a couple of minutes ago, I think. All right, good. Are you recording, Sarah? Are we good?
yeah.
And then we need someone to volunteer to do a fun intro. Is it Yuval this time?
I guess.
And then what? Can everyone take one step forward? Like you're supposed to be on the inside of the circle. It's inclusive.
One step, okay?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. All right, let's do it. So Yuval, give us a big introduction. We'll all pretend we're excited, and then we'll get going.
Okay. On your time. On your note.
Go for it.
Hello. Endgame.
Oh shit! Did the sound?
It cut out. It cut out. You hear him say hello? He said hello, and then it just cut out. Yes, we do.
Do it again.
Hello, Endgame. That's sort of an intro.
Hello, this is Garnet, and welcome to the show Endgame with your host, Nomino.
anybody here in the stream, can you go ahead and tell me if this is live? I cannot tell at this moment. It looks like it is, though.
Not everything.
Hey guys, I'm gonna ask everybody, please do not talk whatsoever. Please mute your mics immediately. Do not talk at all. We are experiencing a lot of lag in this room with so many
Hey, Nomano, it's Gunter when you have a second.
Oh, it's back. Oh, it's back.
Yep. Cool. I've been messaging you if you can open up the embedded options in your YouTube page, which is YouTube blah 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 / features. Well, I haven't tried since maybe you did that. I haven't.
It should be live again, Gunter. I'm looking at it right now. I don't know about the other stuff. Whoever is talking, Claire, please mute your
Ask
mic.
people to
Do
leave.
not speak whatsoever in this room at this moment in time. Thank you.
What would help?
God dang it. Okay, I'm gonna turn myself down a little bit because I feel like I'm way too loud. Alright, yep. Alright, guys, if you can hear me, we're gonna have to start kicking some of you people
I can
out.
hear you.
We cannot
The audio is working
this
now.
up and live. Please do not talk. We're gonna ask some of you
Yeah, I
to
can hear
please
you.
leave and watch the stream.
I can only hear whoever's talking.
So, anybody who's here, if you're talking,
Someone just said, okay.
I can't hear you, Jesse. I can hear some people. I can hear about like 2 or 3 people.
Can y'all hear
Yeah,
me?
you can probably hear me. Yeah, because I hear everyone else.
I can hear this guy.
everybody,
I can hear this guy too.
do not
Yeah,
We got
let's do our own show. Let's just
Yeah,
do our
hey,
show.
so
Hey,
what's up? This is
guys.
Endgame. You know, this is our show. That is it.
We're gonna start asking.
And I'm
people to
Deadpool.
start
Thank you very
leaving.
much.
We are unable to support the stream in this room at this time. There is a stream up on YouTube. I will link it in the public lobby. If people could go ahead and start leaving and go watch that there, just so we can have performance recording and actually have audio during the stream.
Okay,
Ghoster,
so I'm gonna
how
take
do
a
I
bunch of
reset
people
the
away.
stream?
Here.
It's good. It's working, by the way.
Oh, it's working? Okay.
This is Gunter.
Is
Everything's
there
working.
sound in
I
the
hear
stream?
people. I hear people. I hear you guys.
I hear people. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
people were complaining about the embedding thing. I couldn't figure it out.
It's working now, and I have it up in my room. I have your show playing in my room, and then I just let Talia, I don't know how to say it actually, know, and hopefully she can get that boot up in alt space. Is she here?
She's right here. She's right here.
We've actually never, I don't think we've ever, actually I don't see her. She's gone. She's not there for me, so.
She's not here.
Nothing can.
She's
I'm
not there.
He's not for me, so
Yeah.
I'll figure that out later.
She's not there.
So let her know the embedding works and alt space can stream now. And what I'm going to do at this moment is ask people that are from alt space, definitely stick around. You should be here for this here. Those that have been to Endgame a whole bunch and wouldn't mind not being in here and coming with me to Gunter's Universe and watching in the audience, that would be super helpful. Basically, until a good amount of people leave, the show really can't go on.
But
So
they wanted someone to announce.
Hey, you all should stay
don't worry
in.
about you. I'm saying, anybody not involved. So I'm gonna put a poll down and hope that enough people.
Zircron stayed up so late to be here. I'm not, Zircron stays.
If you don't have lag, you're gonna want to go there as well. So there's a good amount of people going. Okay, we're good. We're good.
Depends how extreme it is.
I got bored.
There we go. All right.
But if this is your first
Thank
time
you.
in Endgame,
You should be good to go.
All right, let's try it again. Can you both hear everybody?
Yeah, I can hear.
You. Okay.
I didn't get your name right.
Hugs.
Oh,
This is
Charlie.
No.
Hi, everybody. Charlie.
So, your host, nominal, and guest stars, Charlie and Vivian.
Yes, great. Let's do it.
Okay.
Come back in here. Get
let's
back
wait.
in the circle.
Lexi,
We're
you go
doing
do
it
your
now.
homework. Go do your homework.
Oh wait, we need to wait for Talia.
They're just not going to come any closer. That's as far as we're going to get. Let's just do it.
You're not completely blind Mario anymore.
Hello, this is Garnet, and welcome to the Endgame show with your host, nominal, and guest star, Charlie and Vivian.
Yay!
Yeah! Woo! Yeah!
Fourth time's the charm.
Next listen will be the choosing.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. Thank you. Sorry, we had a lot of trouble today getting this thing going. I think Vivian, you're too big of a draw. You're crashing the servers now.
Yeah, it's still not good. Doster, you're the one streaming right now. Can you stop it and start it back up?
Oh, man.
It's really the best in the moment. But turning it off and on again,
How's
usually that's
my
how you
hair
fix
look?
tech stuff, right?
How's my avatar look?
You're looking good.
Because
You look like you're from
Looking
Alzheimer's.
hip.
You were lucky, right? You have one of your, this is like a custom Altspace avatar, right?
Which I guess isn't so special here because everyone's custom, but
Yeah.
What?
If you're watching the live stream, I mean, who cares? Like, I'm gonna edit this. I'm gonna put it up later. It's gonna be half as long. You don't have to sit through all of this technical difficulties. Wait for the edited version of the show.
But like, why? See, look.
Oh, the only reason we got
You're good, Bowser. Just don't block anybody.
So, I'm trying for those that volunteered to leave to have something, but
I've never
you
been
just tell
here.
them,
Yeah.
tell them, psych, you can't watch and watch it later. Hopefully this is it. If this isn't it, then then we're done trying. That's absolutely.
We abandoned the live stream. That's fine. No, let's try it, Ghoster, and as long as you're also recording, we'll go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Wait, so is this it? Are we gonna try again now?
Both. Yeah. If this doesn't work, then.
All right. We were just in the middle of celebrate or going hooray, right?
Hooray. Yeah.
Hooray! Welcome to Endgame. We got it, Yuval. You're good. So I'm here with Charlie and Vivian today, and we're going to talk about like the generation gap. What's going on? Are people being left behind? Are the young people stuck in a bubble and they're going to close themselves off? What's going to happen? I don't know. It's crazy. I guess before I get to Community Spotlight, which is usually the first thing we do, I should check in with you guys and just give a brief introduction. Like, Charlie, what should we say about you? You're a young person, relatively.
No, I mean, I was doing this back when this was like a podcast where we talked about VR as like a thing, maybe. Yeah, and like in school when you would like talk to us about how there was going to be a big VR thing someday, and we were like, "That's stupid," and then we went back to watching YouTube videos. Here we are. So you get to say you were right.
I mean, I'm not right yet because like this is still the beginning. Like I will be right when it's the mainstream and it's taken over everything, and this is what everyone's doing if you're living in VR. That's when I'm proven right.
Good.
So give it a few more weeks. And then Vivian, we know you from Altspace. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you know a bit about this too. Like, can you tell us where you're coming from with your work and everything?
Sure. So I work with older adults for a nonprofit organization, and I work with technology and virtual programming. So that's mainly why I what started in AltSpace was to find a place to bring programming to a virtual space so we can reach a more global audience.
And like we saw, you know, the show that you did there when you played the game and everything is like AltSpace was shutting down, and like
oh yeah,
you had like it was really cool. It was cool that it came all together for that one time. But you're gonna continue the show, right? You're gonna do it here, I think, tomorrow.
Yeah. So right. So separate from my work, I was on this like little contest thing to get an avatar. And it came with a talk show. So I will be doing a talk show now. And I'm going to have my first one here in a VR chat tomorrow.
Wait, was the real prize that you got a custom avatar? It wasn't the talk show?
Well, I guess it was both, but I was just after the avatar.
Yeah.
So...
you got to stand out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming, both of you. So, we usually talk about where the world is going, how we feel about the future, if we're going to transcend or if civilization will collapse. And I like to check in with somebody from the community every week to see how they feel about it. So, Melody, can you come up and tell us how you're feeling? This is Melody, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
So, how do you feel about it? Like, what are your general thoughts about the future?
Well, for me, I've always been really positive about it, but I've honestly seen a lot of people that I've known in real life always feel like humanity doesn't have a chance or really have any way to do anything. So for me, I felt good, but everybody around me's always felt negative. Like, I know a lot of friends that always see all the negatives and like they've given up faith on humanity, but here it's completely different, and it's kind of refreshing in that sense. So I'm positive, but I don't really know much.
Wait, so you think that the VR community that you're finding here is actually more optimistic than people you know in the real world?
Almost incomprehendibly. Most of the people I know are very, very negative when it comes to like the future of humanity.
Where do you think that comes from? Like
the news.
Yeah, so like that's
things that are happening every day.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to scare the shit out of us, and I guess it's working most of the time. So other people have talked about like what's going to happen in the distant future. Ghoster thinks we're going to go off into space. Other people think we're going to go inside. Some people think we're just going to wipe ourselves out in the next week. Can you see a future 100 years from now? Are we still around?
Well, assuming nothing bad happens in a few months with North Korea, I certainly do.
So we're just worried about like really near-term stuff. Okay.
Yeah. But I do honestly see us doing something great. We've got a lot of advances we've made recently, and it's a pretty big deal. I mean, there was the whole thing with like an AI that we created that could actually think for once. That was a pretty big thing, And I don't know how that technology is going to turn out, but who knows? It could be like the next light bulb.
It already wanted to put people in human cells.
Wait, what?
Yeah, some of the AIs, after watching videos of what the human race was from the beginning to the end, actually turned out wanting to put us in human cages for our own protection.
They're learning from us. That's what we do to like other animals.
That's what I'm saying. So imagine.
You guys, we got to start setting a better example, because the computer overlords are coming. They're going to rule us, and
we can't trust AI to be like better than people, because AI is as human. They're more human than humans. Their only basis for which they have to exist are on humanity. They're not like we are, where we have like instincts and like things that we've gained from like millions and millions of years of evolution. They're just the ideas that people put into their heads, and so we can't like. They're gonna be very, I think, human in a lot of their thinking.
Oh, I don't know. So we did AI last week, and I think I've come around to it. They're not going to be more human than human. They're going to be better than human. Like, I really look up to them as like a god creature. Where like you talk about millions of years of evolution, and the general AIs that we're training to do like specific tasks, like walk or play League of Legends or whatever, like they go through that million years of evolution in like 24 hours, right? Like they could run those cycles really quickly. And so, like, I feel like the time in which they're going to be similar to us will be so brief. It'll just be like, well, a threshold that they'll cross through so quickly that
it'll be like their preteen angst phase, and then they'll get over it.
Yeah, hopefully that's just going to last like 5 minutes. I
Domino?
don't want to.
There's the reason I said it would be like a light bulb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to change everything. It's going to be. Anything else, Melody? Like anything else about the future you've been thinking of?
Nothing sadly comes to mind, and this is my spotlight, but I don't know. I didn't
You've
really
got to be
prepare
excited
that
about
well.
VR, right? Like you were coming to VR chat before you even had a headset, which you just got recently. So you've been like anticipating this for a while.
Oh dear.
Oh, and there's a
Sorry,
real life
guys.
dog in your way.
Yeah, I don't know why, but yeah. Yeah.
Do you suspect in 100 years you'll still be around and you'll be living in virtual reality?
Don't trip.
Okay, I hope so. I'll see you
She
there.
muted herself.
Okay,
He
someone
was
took care
hoping
of the
for full
dogs.
body.
That's soon. We'll have that in 100 years for sure.
All right,
thank
the
you.
biggest issue. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I just wanted to say one last thing about that. The biggest issue I see, if we ever do manage to stay alive, will just be redefining what our purpose is.
Yeah. What do you guys think about that? Like, it's been a struggle for so long, and it's a struggle right now for the whole world. We're figuring out how to fit together. But like, let's assume we get over that. Like, AI is a magic potion that solves all of our problems, and now there's no immediate threat. Like, what happens to us? Like, when there's no purpose?
I think we have to get over the whole looking for a reason for things to be. I think that whole angst about trying to come up with a reason for why we do things. Life isn't a metaphor for other things. Like, we're not gonna have a big. We're never gonna find an answer of this is the point. Everyone just has to do what they like.
There's a quiet tone right there.
Whatever makes them fulfilled, and people are gonna have to each individually create their own reason to exist. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Do you sort of agree with that, Vivian?
Well, personally, I do. I don't subscribe to that everything happens for a reason. I feel like we find reasons for things to make sense of what just happened. But as humanity as a whole, I think that they will always try to find some sort of purpose. Just as it's a human thing. This is why we worship the sun and made up gods and religions, all that kind of stuff, because we need reasons to move forward or to be. It's like this constant need for purpose. And that's actually a really big trend right now, is that attracting millennials into the workforce, is that a lot of millennials really want their life and their jobs to have meaning. And that's one of the big trends right now.
Do you think that they're sort of looked down upon in a way because of that? Like the older generation might be just, no, pull up your bootstraps. You just have to get into it. Like, what you want to like your job? Like, what's going on? Like, you're spoiled, or is that a stereotype?
Oh yeah. Oh, please. I live to dispel those types of stereotypes, because it's so true. Every generation hates on the previous generation. That's just the way of life, and it's really hard to put everyone into one single bucket, because for me, I would say yes, I'm a millennial, but I'm also a first generation in America, so I have a different point of view than maybe somebody else my age too. So it's really always a human issue, and of course there's always people they're gonna look down on millennials because you have to have meaning. But as somebody who has a very fulfilling job, it's not a bad thing to want. So, whether people think oh, whatever, they're just dreaming or they're idealists, it doesn't matter, because those types of jobs do exist, and people can certainly want to do it, and it is a very rewarding thing to do once you find it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more and more true over time that you have to find something that really draws you in, because there's not going to be a lot of just redundant, tedious work out there anymore. Automation and stuff will take care of it.
Right. Well,
so you need to focus.
Yeah, I mean, we have this. I know this gentleman who's in his 90s, right? And he's just like super fit and very awesome, very with it still. And I interviewed him for a newspaper, and he was just telling me about all the things that he's lived through, right? And he talked about how after high school, he just went directly to work in the factory. And with that job, he raised a family, owned a home, and retired. And it was working in a factory, which those jobs have been pretty much eliminated. So people are seeing that like these easy jobs are not easy to come by anymore. They have to go to school, and a lot of it is it's very expensive. So one of the things that people are going to do is, well, what's going to be worth my money and what's going to be worth my time, and it's actually very refreshing. And I'm glad that people are starting to go towards that route. And that's something I definitely tell people that when they come to me and they tell me like what they're going to do with their life, and I always try to tell them to, as silly as it sounds, like figure out how to make something you love work for you in some sense. You know, like I did not grow up saying I wanted to work with older adults, right? Like I did not go into gerontology, but in my job, I happen to do a lot of things I love. For instance, VR, working with, Alexa, Google Home, and helping people get on their iPads and get online. And that is stuff that I love to do. So, being able to find a job doing something that I love, even though it's not the same field, it's rewarding and it exists.
Yeah. I'm curious, Charlie. Are you heading there? Are you heading in the right direction?
I sort of feel like at a certain point we're going to move on where like all the practical jobs which are like necessary are going to be done by robots, and then I think people will do the things that people do for free. Things that people, because people work and spend a lot of effort to create things for free. Like everyone on like that's what YouTube was started on. Like all these people spend doing stuff for free. All these like things, these hobbies will become what people do, and as opposed to like what they do in between their job, they'll become like I think what people spend a lot of their lives on.
So like, why are you going to college then? What are you planning on? Where are you going?
I'm going to college to like learn how to. Well, I'm trying to make movies. I'm trying to meet people who also want to do what I want to do, and I'm trying to get invested in a thing which requires like large groups of people to get together and all work to the same common goal. I'm trying to find those people and learn as much as I can.
All right. So you might be heading in the right direction. We'll see what happens to you.
We'll see. I am curious what happens to like industries like the film industry, industries like video games, which require large groups of people to be organized and to assume roles. Like what will happen to them because like all of those rely on like people spending money on them in order for them to exist. Like what will...
Well, consider this, right? Like we're doing something that is similar to maybe like an old school television like talk show or something, right? But to do a talk show in the old days, like the amount of different people that would have to work on this, like the people setting up the lights and doing the sound and the cameras, and it would you would give jobs to a huge group of people, but all of those technical jobs have gone away, right? Like now it's just us up here on a stage for free, using free software to record a thing and put it up on YouTube for free, and like all those peripheral jobs have gone away. So like really only the core creative people can do most things on their own soon. And so like, I wonder what a movie set will look like in 20 years. Like how many people are going to be there to make a movie?
It will be interesting. Like, will the next like Game of Thrones be something somebody makes on their like laptop after work? Just like a dragon here, a thing here, 10, 20 animate actors. Like I'll put a program in to make them emote later, like that sort of thing.
And they'll do better. They'll be better than D&D.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So where should we get started here? What was the first thing on my outline?
Age gap.
Well, how do you feel about the different ages? How do you think they perceive technology? Like, so like you're relatively young, and like, what's different, do you think, for your generation than for mine? Like, do you guys just take it for granted, or are you still in like what's going on?
I think we take it for granted to a certain extent. Like we don't like it. We expect it to keep moving forward without much effort. Like because since I've been born, like technology has only gotten faster. I've never been to a period where like when I was like, I mean, YouTube came out when I was like 6 or 8. Like I was like young, when like this whole technology boom sort of happened. And I remember in high school, like you would talk about all this stuff, and nobody was ever like that impressed with all the. We always sort of assume that things are going to keep moving forward, and that progress is going to keep like advancing and like faster and faster and faster. Whereas my mom and my dad have a view of technology where they're sort of impressed by it, but they also don't. Like I think people like Generation X are the people who have the most respect for technology, who have like seen it from basically develop like this whole VR technology and the internet developed from like very basic to become very, very complex, and have been through like the entire phase. Whereas like my parents don't think of technology as like a major force in the world, because they're used to thinking of it in terms of like the way they thought about politics in the 70s, where they think they don't like put a lot of weight on what technology has to do with like the rest of society, I think, as much as like you do.
Yeah, because like you're talking about having the perspective of going through it a little bit, and like just the experience of me having to deal with a landline and what that meant for so long, and then to one day get a cell phone. That cell phone has a different meaning to me, right? Whereas if you're born with a cell phone, and it's sort of, you just take that for granted. I can always communicate with everyone. I can go wherever I want. I'll always have a map. None of this existed, Charlie. If I wandered away from home, I could get lost.
Plans. I have no idea how people made plans. I didn't know how that works.
It was weird. So Vivian, like, what have you heard from some of the older generation? Like, how are they perceiving this whole technology boom or the way things are changing?
Well, they definitely think it's crazy, but I will, offer some contrast here to Charlie's perspective about people being impressed or not impressed. Like, all of us right now who are in VR chat and who are using VR, like, I hear people who use VR who are just not impressed. They're like, there are parts of things that they're not impressed with. And part of that is because we are early adopters. Okay, like me, I'm constantly like, oh my gosh, if we don't hurry up and adopt this stuff, everything's gonna end. Okay, but people will tell me like, no, you're fine. Like, don't worry, you're ahead of it, right? So that's what we often take for granted, is that we are doing something that's much more progressive. So in a few years, when VR is much more mainstream, we will continue to be unimpressed with it, but other people will be impressed with it. And one thing I always say is, don't forget which generation actually built the internet and which one got it started, right? Like my daughter's 12. She did not start the internet, even though she grew up with it. She just happens to reap the benefits of it. And so will people in the future once VR becomes more mainstream, right? So there's definitely that, where people forget that there are always people who are progressive, and they're the ones that started it. And they won't be impressed. Like I told you, I spoke with someone in Silicon Valley, and they're saying like, well, who doesn't know this stuff anymore? And they were an older person. They were like in their 60s. Yeah, they were older than me, and so they're saying like, yeah, everyone knows how to do it. And I said, you're taking it for granted because you work in Silicon Valley, so you use technology, whereas a lot of people don't. As somebody who like built websites for people before, I mean, a lot of people do not have mobile-ready websites. They have not switched to HTML5. I mean, there's a lot of people who just they're reacting to their everyday. They're just doing their job. They don't think about like, well, how do I get into the next century as much. So
yeah, I mean, I'm experiencing that like every year. There's like new stuff, and the web is changing, and it seems like there's more and more expected of me. Like I have to understand more and more of what's happening behind the scenes, and because I'm not necessarily keeping up, it's very easy just to get to a point where it's like, oh, this isn't for me anymore. Like I feel like I've aged out already, where I don't understand what's happening online, and I can't imagine, being much older and sort of having this happen where, like, so I'm just thinking about my parents like asking for help all the time with computers, right? Because I was super young, I got a computer, I grew up with it. It was like a part of my life, and they didn't give a shit. They were sort of like thought it was silly to spend, and then times changed, and all of a sudden they need computers and they need help all the time, like to get it to work. And eventually that sort of led me to be a little bit like to hold a bit of a grudge, where I was sort of like, you were so condescending when I had a computer, and now you need my help 24 hours a day like make the computers work for you. And I can see why people will sort of get frustrated with the people who aren't totally caught up yet, who like still need some help to, you know, figure some of this stuff out. Like I can see where like some of the condescension or them being condescending to like a different generation will come from, because like I have a little bit of that too.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of people have it. I mean, you know, that's what keeps me in business. Really, is when people come to me. All of our customers are always like, "Oh, I don't have a smartphone. I have a dumb phone, and I'm not smart enough to use a phone." I mean, it's like a punchline. You know, I'm like, okay, I keep hearing that, but they really feel very insecure. So, like everybody here, okay, a lot of you guys know how to make your own avatars. All right, if you started to tell me stuff about your avatars, I would. Like, if you could see my eyes, I would be glazed. Actually, I probably would have gone AFK, went to go make some, you know, like a sandwich, and come back, because I have no idea what you're talking about, right? And, I mean, but that's the thing, is that, like, I don't have any idea. And so to some of you, you might think, like, how do you not understand this, right? But that's not what I do, right? And that's how I relay it to older adults, that they don't, it's not that they're stupid or they're dumb. And I always tell them that you have to remember that all technology was made by man, okay? People made it. And guess what? People are flawed and they make mistakes. People who are, you know, graduated from, you know, MIT or wherever, and they work in technology, they're totally immersed in it. They build it for themselves, and they don't always think about it. And I say that's why there's constant updates all the time, and that's why it progresses so fast. Is because we're humans that make mistakes of these really awesome machines. Like, and I always tell people recently, because I send out these like latest tech news, right, to keep us up to date. And I was talking about when Uber launched their self-driving car. Well, and then a little bit after that, they announced that one of the cars got into an accident. But the funny thing is that the car did not cause the accident. A human driving another car caused the accident. So it's always like humans, you know, that make these type of mistakes. And it's a human thing. And it's not that you are too dumb to use it. You know, it's just that it's a human thing to not know things sometimes, and that's okay. And I know a lot of us get so impatient because we are so good at it, right? Like I can set up Facebook, and I can set up accounts, and I can set up people's phones. And if my mom were to ask me, I would, you know, please leave me alone, Mom, because you're my mom, right? And you might feel the same way. Like you might not want to help your parents because they annoy you just in general. That's what they do as parents. But when the people that come to me, they just want to know that they're not stupid. You know, they just want to know that they can do it. And that's the number one thing, is putting people at ease. Is that this is approachable. You just need someone who's patient enough to teach you.
I feel the avatar example, because like I wasn't able to do any of this. Other people helped me to do it, and like so many times I heard so many times like where I would be confused and like explain to someone like, oh, I can't figure it out, and to them they would be like, but it's so easy. You just follow these steps. They send me a web page, and I would just be flummoxed. It's like, oh, you don't understand how confused I am. Like to you, it's so obvious, all these little steps, but I'm new.
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the AltSpace Discord, they have, oh, here's directions for this. I'm like, cool story. Not going to happen. None of my AltSpace friends are going to help me with it. You know, but on the flip side, if you guys needed help with something, you know, like, I don't know, making a Facebook page, I could certainly help you with that. That's my specialty. I mean, people always kind of clump technology people together, right? Like in my family, I don't know how many, there is a lot of us that work with technology. Like, there's just a lot of us who do it, but none of us know what the other one does, and none of us can do each other's job. Like my brother, he was a computer science major. I have no idea what he does. Okay, so he told me what he does. He works at Blizzard, and he's just telling me what he does with this program management, blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, that sounds like what I do. It's not what I do. You know, totally different pay scale, but it sounded like what I do. He can't do what I do though. You know what I mean? And I can't do what he does. And in our company, we don't have like an emerging technology department. We have an IT department. And so they always just refer to IT, oh, have IT do it. And I'm like, well, we don't do that. You know? And then they'll say, like, they'll ask me for computer help. I said, well, I don't do that. So I just like poke around. Okay, yeah, I fixed it. I unplugged it, plugged it back in, and they think I'm smart, you know. So it's just like we forget that like everyone has their own specialty, and we just kind of lump everything all together all the time.
And things are getting more specialized over time. Like it is, the world seems to be getting more complex.
People forget how much everyone else doesn't know. Like each one of us knows like a minute fraction of the things a society needs to know in order to function. Like, no, if any one of us had to like restart a do even like a basic thing, like build a house, something, I would be screwed. Like there's the vast amount of things that we need to keep society functioning that I don't know. Like it's an immense amount of stuff.
There's that great example about the pencil. Like to make a pencil, it's too complicated that no one human on Earth can do it. It takes so much, whatever, because it's been built up over time, over a bunch of different technologies.
Well, and I always hear that when people say, like, oh, look at what humans have done. We are so smart. We've done all this stuff. And I say, okay, let's just erase time. Let's just put you in the middle of it, and let's see if you can figure it out. You know, it's not as simple as that. Like, just like Charlie said, and an example I always use, like, you know, people are always, like, kind of hopping on other people's hard work and talents, you know. But, again, we forget. We reap the benefits of people who are doing this kind of thing. So it's definitely like you definitely take advantage or kind of take it for granted sometimes, because if we were in the desert island, you know, even like in Castaway, I could not do what Tom Hanks did. You know,
I could totally survive. I took Tom Hanks the shit out of that whole thing.
Oh yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
So like you're bringing up these, like, I think it's easy to understand why there could be a generation gap, right? Because like things are getting confusing and we're going into different areas and there's all these bubbles. And so like, have things been like exacerbated? Like, because you mentioned this is something that's been around for a long time, right? The old generation will always think something about the younger generation. They'll always think something about, like, there's these things in these cycles that we go through. But as technology is accelerating, like, are we falling more apart, or like, what is anything changing? Like, is it getting worse? Is, I guess, my question. Are we growing more apart?
I would definitely say that we are growing apart in a lot of senses, and there are people who are trying to kind of to bridge this gap. But, like, look at where we are right now, okay? I'm in a room with a bunch of you guys. There's, like, a zombie, you know? There's a cow. It's like, I can't even begin to explain this to people. It's, like, they're just so, like, what? I don't, you know, and it's impressive. And I work with people who've been working with VR for, you know, over 25 years. And they're still impressed. I've only met one person who's worked with VR for decades, and he's like, you know, he's not as impressed anymore. But there's definitely such a huge gap, you know, because literally my job is to help people use technology to help them with isolation and with loneliness and to help them age better, right? But people are afraid of it. They don't want to use it. So definitely there's such a huge need for it, and more and more people are going to get older. And I use this example. I was talking to someone who's my age. We were talking about this very same issue, and I said to him, you know, like, eventually everyone in the world will know how to use a cell phone, but I'm going to get older, and I'm going to probably need help from my daughter how to teleport. And he seriously stopped the conversation, and he said, teleporting doesn't exist. And I was like, okay, like, I know that, but there's going to be, like, technologies that I don't understand that my daughter will. Case in point, musically, I don't get it. But anyway, I did have to go back to him and say teleporting does exist if you've been to Altspace, just saying. All right, so.
we do it all the time.
Right, exactly.
So if you do have a question or you have a comment, line up and come up to this circle. I wasn't paying attention to see if there was anybody up there. I can't tell who this young girl is. I don't know if she has a question or not. But I was going to talk about, so my experience with some of this is when I came out of college, I did like some videography work. Oh, what? Okay, yeah. Thank you. That's right. Thank you, Ghoster. So after college, I started. I eventually found myself in the film workshop, which was like this film program for a bunch of different age kids that went from like middle school all the way up to college. And it was really eye-opening for me because I had gone through the regular school system and I was always with people my own age. And then suddenly I was thrown into this thing where they were all mixed ages, and it seemed to work way better. Like having that age diversity made the program, like, I don't know, just it helped everyone mature. Like young people are learning from the older people. It seemed to flow really, really well. And so Charlie was a part of that program, and we both know the guy who runs it, who is now in his early 80s. And
80s,
like
yeah.
he's keeping up, like he does a lot of stuff, like taking advantage of everything. He finally got a cell phone. But like one thing that I've had weird feelings about is recently, and I also noticed this at a high school I worked at, the students will get on Snapchat and they basically like are sneaking like pictures of people, like old people that like sort of make fun of them. And it's like a mix between like celebrating these older people, but also like, you know, trying to make them look silly and taking weird pictures and adding the emojicons and making fun of them. And it's this weird thing where I don't know where to, I don't know how to feel about it. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it feels weird. Like they're sort of, they're keeping them like they're aliens or something, but they're like, look at this, and like almost they're doing like a documentary and like watching animals in the savannah or something, like studying it as if it's a different kind of a creature or something. I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable because now I feel like young people are doing that to me because like I'm distant enough from them that I'm a buffoon at this point. I don't understand what's going on, and from their perspective, I'm like a freak show, right? Like, or anyone over the age of, you know, whatever, in their 20s and beyond, like is outside of that bubble or whatever. I don't know. Do you think that's true, Charlie? Like, do you observe that? Is that over now in college?
No, I think there's a weird there's a weird, we don't take people who are older than us seriously, I think. I mean, I think that's part of like the whole teenage rebellion of the like, oh, old people are stupid. Because like when you're little, you assume everyone older than you knows more than you do. And then at some point you learn that actually there's things they don't know, and there's things that they've been telling you that they have no idea what they're talking about. And then there's this weird impulse to just ignore everything anyone like over 20 is saying to you and just be like, this is stupid, this is lame, I don't care, I'm over it, and then sort of make fun of them. I think there's definitely that impulse. Melody?
Yeah, just a really quick question. How old did you say the younger crowd was that was making fun of the old people? I mean, I'm only
like
22, but I've never seen people do that.
High school, like 15, 16?
Yeah, you actually might be too old. Like Snapchat wasn't around when you were in high school.
Yeah, I'm not actually really into the kind of social media stuff, so I'm kind of clueless.
Who here is in Snapchat? Can you raise your hand if you're willing to admit that? And like, I guess, so I'm only seeing maybe 3 and 4, and I wonder how old they are. Like, if you want to admit, like, I wonder, are you're probably, well, I don't want to assume that you're like a teenager. Like, maybe you're not. Maybe you're an old person. I don't know.
I would say though that it's not really just like high schoolers making fun of like older adults. Like for me, I'm very obviously keenly aware of it because I work with people who are, you know, like older people, and I find that it's just like this condescending thing anyway. Like even on Facebook, people are always like posting cute pictures of, you know, older adults or like grandparents, like, oh, I mean, they have like this stupid made up story for the internet, and they're just like, oh, aren't they so cute? I mean, like, just think for a second, all of you, okay? I don't know how old you are. Just think for a second, all the things that you know, all the things that you've gone through in life, and growing up, right? You have a car, you drive, you have a job, you have a family, whatever it is, and then you get to a certain age, and all of those things kind of go away. Like, suddenly you're not working anymore. You don't have a car. You can't drive. Okay? you have this rich life experience, and then some bratty little 20-year-old, 15-year-old, 10-year-old comes up to you and says, "You are so adorable." Like, it's just so insanely condescending. Like, I hate it. Every time I see it on Facebook, they're like, "Oh, the elderly are so cute." Yes, because they got older, so that you can just think how cute they are, and they're so adorable and inept and all this stuff. It's like, they're just people. Like, we're just people, and it's like so frustrating to see that, because I don't know if it's just because I'm very aware of it as I work with them, and also because children scare me. So actually, most people in clusters of groups scare me. So whenever I see children walk in or whatever, I drive through college. I work in a college town. I'm always like, oh my god, there's clusters of people who haven't developed their frontal lobe yet, and
they're dangerous.
Yes, they have no idea what like consequences are. And so anyway, I'm teasing. So counter teasing, but I would definitely say, if you are that person that's like, oh, they're so adorable, like, just stop it. Like, it's so annoying to me.
I appreciate you saying that, because like that's something I've witnessed and it made me feel weird, like, and I never really put my finger on it, because like it is sort of it's like, it's not a compliment, but it seems positive, right? You're saying, oh, you're adorable.
Yeah, it's a microaggression.
Like, yeah. Okay. So there is this great opportunity, right? Like I was mentioning the mixing of ages at the workshop, and you're talking about these people who are older and they have this great wealth of life experience. So how is it possible now somehow, maybe with technology, like why are we not coming together more? Like now it would be very easy, like here in VR chat, for young and old people to meet up, and they can hear about history through like a first person perspective, and a young person can explain why the kids are being so crazy to like an older person. Like how do we get more of that like mixing between the generations?
Well, I don't want to give off the impression that like my opinion is that just people all around are good and bad. Okay, so that's number one. And I think that the younger kids nowadays, like they have a lot more going for them because of their exposure to the world, like globally, and knowing and understanding how things work. I think that they are much more understanding of differences in people. Okay, it's the unfortunate thing is that we are so divisive in the way that we do language and talk. I'm a writer, and I was in this writer group, and somebody posted their article about their millennials just don't get it. She's a millennial, and she wrote it, and then it caused like this whole long debate. But that's a very big topic right now, like millennials, and they don't get it, and they want their avocado toast and all this stuff, which is so unfortunate, and that just makes people very defensive. Like no one wants to hear that, because millennials are going through their own type of issues that no other generation ever had to go through, and so that there's that divide that people they self-impose. But if we didn't have that, you're going to have a group of millennials who are very compassionate as a generation, and very wanting to make a difference in their lives and do things that make a difference. Okay, and then on the other spectrum, you have older adults who it's such a weird world for them. Like we have to be very empathetic and understanding that it's such a weird world for them, and it's just much easier to ignore it and not even bother, right? And so it does take a lot of effort of everyone to say, like, I'm going to go and help someone with it, or I'm going to write a blog post that's much more like bridging. So, I mean, there's so many opportunities because, and I talk about this, is that older adults, it's like they're going to get, the population is so big, it's going to get so much bigger, and it's very scary because, like, jobs are running out, and we're overpopulated and all that kind of stuff. So what's wrong? Everybody's cut out. You can't. I can hear you.
I can hear.
You can't hear me.
I can hear.
Can you hear
Can
her?
you not hear us? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Oh, sorry. You stopped talking on my end. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah. So anyway, like I was saying, that I think that there's definitely opportunities, and that's definitely something that I'm always advocating, and that's actually what I do. Now that Allspace is still going to be around, I'm so excited. Is trying to use VR to bring people together because you know, where I work, we have the saying that we meet you where you are. You know, so wherever people gather is where we will be to provide services and programs to, you know, to help you live a better life, so to speak. And there are people here, and I'm finding that more and more that I spend in VR that have a specific need, and that's where I would like to be to help people with that. So it definitely stops becoming an age thing if we start thinking of it as a human thing. You know, you don't have to get to a certain age to be lonely or need help or want companionship. That's like a lot of people want that. So it's really. I always try to get people to stop thinking of it in terms of age. Like, yes, like I do serve a specific demographic because that is what we do at the nonprofit. You know, but they're no different than somebody that I would know who's younger, and in good ways and bad ways. So I think that just being able to talk about it like today with everybody, it would hopefully make people a little bit more empathetic with, you know, their parents, their grandparents, and a little bit more aware that there is such a huge need, and that if you are looking to do something that's meaningful, there's a lot of opportunities for us to do that. And especially now that VR is, you know, pretty new, like we can all shape what we choose to do with this world and this environment.
I'm kind of hoping, like, you're talking about Altspace and VR chat, and it's sort of a great equalizer, right? Like, there's a lot of different types of people that will come here, and there's a lot that you don't know about the other person, right? Like, it doesn't matter how old they are in most cases. Like, it doesn't matter where they are on the world. And so, like, I'm hoping that that's sort of the main thing that causes us to sort of see each other more as human, because like we don't have time to put so many labels on each other. Like, I don't see you in real life and then do whatever that calculation is in my lizard brain that like labels you as whatever, and then I disregard all this other stuff about you. I meet you in here, and most of those, you know, assumptions that like people automatically make, you might not make them right away, because like we're all a little bit on equal ground here, and we can represent ourselves. Like that cabbage, like who is this? Like, how old is this person? Where do they live? Like, maybe we'll never. I don't know what assumptions I'm supposed to make about that person, what stereotypes they're supposed to fulfill, you know? And so I don't know. I think that's going to be the great thing about this place, is that you know, we're not going to know a lot about culture.
Yeah, because culturally, I feel like VR is being developed like as we speak. Like the culture of VR is being created. Like we don't really have assumption of like, oh, this person is a robot, that says this about them. This person is an anime character. We're still like deciding what everything means and what the culture in VR is going to be like. Whereas like even the internet is, which has only been around, like modern like internet forum culture has been around for like less than 20 years, I feel like, and that has already sort of solidified into like with good and bad and negatives and positives in its own like sort of internal culture. We can like decide what kind of place we want this to be like now.
Right.
I actually have to say that like I think that's what you're saying is already has happened, and would generally happen right away when we have our metaverse, because like, we're choosing how to present ourselves, and like we can at least have input on what ground we're putting ourselves on. Because, like, for example, like you can see people in Altspace avatars. You can say that I can assume that they affiliate themselves with Altspace or have some connection with it in some way. So I'm saying that's already a thing that we can do. Like, or like something from an IP, or you create something yourself. You can assume, oh, this guy's good with avatars. Oh, this guy is really affiliated with this piece of fiction. You can. That still happens, yeah.
And we get to choose, right? Like, you've chosen your current avatar, and like, you know, it's different than whoever you are in real life. Like, I don't get to, whatever, stereotype you. Wait, have we? This is a super like. This is Ruby. Who's this avatar?
Yeah, it's from Ruby. From the show Ruby.
Are you trying to be cool and young by using that, or what's? Do you have an intention there? Or did you not even think about the age?
I didn't really think about the age that much. I guess it was like when I first tried to get like an avatar, I was trying to find something I identified with, and Ruby was a show that I really loved, and this character is someone that like was pretty cool, and so like I put that in, could kind of got it to work, so I kind of stuck with it. So and then there we are today.
You've come a long way. Your feet are working. It's great.
Yeah, at least my legs are working.
Just a side note, though, that this is a custom avatar, and I was telling my mom, who's here to visit, and she heard about the avatar. She saw the picture of my talk show thing of this avatar, and she said, "Oh, I thought they were gonna make you a custom avatar. Where is it?" I'm like, "Mom, like." She goes, I thought that was a picture of you. So apparently this is what I look like in real life. So according to my mother who birthed me, so I don't know what that says about her or me. So
even like a body scan, like we're still not there yet. I wonder how my parents would feel about this look. My mom hasn't said anything. Oh, my computer turned off. Let me see what else we had on the list.
I am curious what like sort of assumptions people are making and what sort of assumptions people will make based on avatars. Because I feel like right now people choose their avatars. A lot of these are based on IPs that exist outside the metaverse and outside of like this whole sort of world, and from like references from like the internet things, and whether they'll start to have different connotations and have different meanings based on the way people view them from seeing them in VR and seeing like what type of people will have what type of avatars, and whether that sort of thing will emerge.
It's a great merging of like internet culture and I mean I don't know what to call this. It's not real life, but like you used to be able to have a tiny little avatar in your internet chat forum, but it would be like a little square graphic that you're not embodying, and I'm not really connecting with who you are, right? Like, so you're showing me a little bit about yourself, but it's like, it's a very small little fraction. And here you get to embody the whole thing. We talk about this all the time, Charlie. I suggest you go back to episode 3 of Endgame and watch us. Like a bunch of people talk about why they chose their avatars, and we get to learn a lot about people. It's cool.
That's interesting.
From here, do you think? Okay, so I guess my general question for the future. Let's sort of go into presuming what might happen after this. Do you see us, like, I guess especially age-wise, but we could talk about a lot of stuff, sort of coming together or growing apart even further, right? Because like technology is going to give us more and more opportunity to go into our little bubbles. Like we can there'll be so many worlds and things in the metaverse I can explore. I get to choose exactly where to go. And if I want, I can go to a place I feel really safe where everyone is just like me and we all have the same interests and whatever. And it seems like we could fall into that bubble problem. But there is just as much opportunity to try and break out and visit a huge, different group of people that I don't know anything about, right? So, like, and I don't know. So where do you think human nature lies in that problem? Like, are we going to come together or grow apart?
I think it has to do with trust. Like we have to build trust, and right now I feel like we have to trust each other in order for that to happen, and I don't think we do. And I mean, there's a reason. Like people have we have to earn each other's trust, and like I would say that a lot of ways people haven't. Like people are not doing as good a job as they could of actually trying to, interact with other people and empathize. I would say because empathy is like the point. And I think people could be trying a lot harder. And some people are actively trying not to. And I think it's sort of a difficult problem of whether or not, because like if we're having like a trust fall now where humanity has to all be like, okay, everybody, are we all together on board? I think we're not. Like we do not trust each other. And for good reason, people are not, like, I do not trust like a lot of like the government. Like people do not trust the government for good reasons and for like all this stuff. And so in order, we have to come up with a way to change and to become people would actually try and be more honest and to be more empathetic with each other, is what I would say.
Do you think it's going to happen? If you had just make a guess, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, but there's gonna have to be a lot. Like, there's a lot of things are gonna happen. It's gonna be a messy road to get there, I think.
Okay. So, what do you think? Can you speculate about the future of this?
I'm kind of still wondering if it's such a bad thing for us to be so virtual. I mean, I just like on a personal level, you know, the amount of time some of us spend in a virtual world, and maybe why do we do it? I was talking with somebody, and we were talking about how you can get your groceries delivered, and you can automate your house, and so a lot of things you don't have to do anymore to interact with the outside world, and of course that's viewed in society as not a good thing. You don't want to be like a hermit or anything like that, but with technology the way it is today, it also alleviates a lot of stressors for some of us, you know, whether we have some anxiety issues. I personally, and I don't know where this came from, but I really have a hard time in big crowds, which people find weird because I'm an outgoing personality, I'm a public speaker, but I definitely have a hard time with it. So I appreciate the community that we've made in Altspace, where if I'm going AFK, like, no one's really going to question that because maybe I just need to get out of it. So I'm still speculating on whether it's such a bad thing, and perhaps we should maybe think of it as a really good solution or alternative, because I can tell you that one of the programs I do for work is we actually do these programs over the phone for people who absolutely, they have nothing around them, no services, or they're completely homebound, just healing in bed. And they're just so alone. And that will always be a thing. That will never change. Okay? But with VR and with, groceries being delivered and automation, like, people don't need to go outside if they don't have to. And that's one of the most beautiful things about technology that we often forget, is that people think, oh, kids don't go outside anymore. Well, you know what? Always and forever there have been kids who don't want to go outside, and that's not wrong, so I think that in a sense, if we keep at this pace, there is a real possibility for us to use this technology in a very good way, even if people think like this in society is not correct. You need to go outside. You need to be with real people in real life. Well, who's to say we're not really with each other right now? That's your perspective. So I'm still, that's definitely one of my big speculations, is what is wrong with this if you don't have to leave your home.
Oh shit.
Rest in peace.
Wow,
well, hopefully she's going to find her way back. And we'll let her finish that. But maybe as she heads in, Melody, did you have something to add?
Yeah, she had one good question. If there's anything wrong with it, and the answer's pretty simple. No. I only say that because I've only been here for 4 months, and I've met an awesome community. I suffer from massive social anxiety. You would know personally. And for what it's worth, I found a place where I don't have to worry about being hurt or judged or really anything too terribly negative. And for me, that's not just relieving, it's a whole nother life. And that's a really big deal. So there's really nothing wrong with it if it doesn't hurt me. I mean, by all means, I have intent to stay healthy so that I can still be in here. Right? So, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
I think if Psych were here, he where I get caught up with him is we do see all these positive benefits, and then some of them he identifies as like coping mechanisms, or like what do you call them, like safety whatever it is, of like ways of avoiding other stuff, and that way you end up not getting over. Oh, hello, Vivian.
Sorry,
you don't get over your social. So like if you avoid it in real life, like if you get all your socializing in virtual reality, is that helping you socialize in real life? And I think that's unanswered, right? Like, I think most of us would actually say yes. And we actually heard a lot of those stories at the Altspace episode. But I think Psych and other people can argue that no, there's some people who this turns into like too much of a coping mechanism, or like an escape from reality, and they end up not actually dealing with whatever the issue is. I think that's what their argument is.
I think because VR is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used in a way which makes the person's life better or worse. I mean, there was a time before painkillers where people did surgery without them, and like that was terrible. And then we had painkillers, and that helps a lot. And yes, some people will use painkillers in a way which will actively like hurt their life, but that doesn't mean we should get rid of it. It's an option, and we have to help people use it responsibly and use it in the way which best benefits them. And I think that's what about, like, it can be used negatively, but so can almost everything.
Yeah, it's always a double-edged sword, but I feel like it always leans in a positive direction. Like what the tool usually gives us a little bit more benefit than whatever the consequence is. But people love identifying those consequences and latching onto them and saying, like, no, this is it. The young people don't get it. TV is going to ruin their minds. It's going to do this to them. It's going to whatever. Yeah. Like everybody's playing video games now and they're not going outside. The world is ending. Like we keep doing that over and over.
And it's important. We need those people because we need people to rise. Like we need things like Black Mirror, and we need people to talk about like the dangers and what bad things that could happen or bad things that are happening, because it's easy to shut those down. So we need people to argue for both the positives and the negatives, so we're aware of everything, I think.
So something you mentioned in your talk on the Altspace presentation was San Junipero, which is like the one episode of Black Mirror that's not depressing, or not as depressing and frightening as the rest of them. It's sort of like, what's a way to give a synopsis? Like it's like an old person's home, or whatever that facility is for people who are aging, and they go into a virtual reality where it's like this. They get to come and be young and hang out and do whatever they want, and it's this escape. And it's been some time since I saw the episode, but like, what was the conflict there? That they were spending too much time in the virtual realm, and I forget what the point was.
So actually, I am one of those people that avoid those types of things, and everyone tells me to watch that one episode of Black Mirror, but I actually have not seen that episode. But
oh my god!
I know, but everyone tells me that it's but it's actually a good thing. It's a positive thing. I'm sorry.
You're gonna watch it tonight. It's on Netflix.
I know. I have a hard time with the post-apocalyptic or the end is nigh, all that kind of stuff.
Oh no, it's very positive, and you can probably watch it with the kids.
Yeah, that one is the more positive. The basic gist of that is like, instead of dying, people download their consciousness into a place where they live forever in this sort of 80s utopia where they're all young, which is sort of interesting. And it's about like these two women who meet each other there.
Something that I would thought about like a while back when like WoW became, or World of Warcraft became popular, and I was like, well, I don't have like, I feel weird. I don't want to spend a ton of time in this. Like it felt like too much of a time sink. But I'm always thinking about the future, and it's like, when I retire, or like when I'm out of this and I have no responsibilities, I'm never going to get bored. There are these worlds, like you can step into an MMO or a virtual reality, and like that generation who is getting older, who might end up isolated and alone in some home away from like, a community, are going to have more and more opportunities to sort of be reintegrated into society, because we're going to have all these like shared spaces and things you can do when time is no object and you can do whatever you want.
Holy shit. I'm sorry.
Late 10, do you have a comment?
Yeah, no. Just this is insane. You have an entire community. I'm just
yeah.
I'm sorry.
So,
this is fucking crazy. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Fair enough.
No, you're good. Everyone's welcome here. All right, so we should run, or like let's roll this out and finish this up. Is there anything else that you want to say in conclusion? And if there's any like final thoughts, like it would be nice if someone had like a nugget, a little quick way of condensing everything we've talked about into one sentence, so we can go home feeling like we've accomplished something. Yeah. So Charlie, any final thoughts from you?
I would say, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to basically empathy is the goal for that solves pretty much almost all of the problems that we've discussed about, like, age gaps and about understanding, because I think as long as you can understand other people and understand where they're coming from, and as long as VR is a tool that's used to help people do that better, I think it will always be a positive thing.
Is there anything else we can do to help that? Like, I think VR is sort of an obvious, great empathy tool. Vivian, is there any, like, how else do we sort of, like, I guess outside of VR, like, are you exploring other ways of sort of mixing the community, or like, because you're usually dealing with them, with older people in the workspace, right? And like how they, like, yeah, what else is happening?
Well, I think that I'm actually working a lot with VR. I mean, I do help people with their getting on their smartphones and automating their home, that type of thing, where they can use technology to their advantage. But I really am pushing for VR, and one of the things that I often talk about is to our community could really stop making it so game centric, because it's electronic, and because it's technology, it's just like, okay, well, everyone that does this is a gamer. But over time, we found that that's just not true. It's heavy in the gaming community, right? But I also hear from a lot of gamers that VR is very boring because the content that they're used to is very different. Like, they can't consume as much of it in VR because of the way that VR works, with the headset on and everything. So I think that sometimes people are like, oh, no one wants to adopt VR because of like gamers, right? And there's not enough games and it's boring. And I think that people are just kind of missing out on a really big population that could really benefit from VR and really try to make it more social. And there are people who are doing more of that, but I think that it's not really quite there yet as the social option. Like, they should really have doctors, hand out gears for their patients because one of the things that they're asking nowadays is, do you smoke? Do you exercise? Do you have a support system? Well, if people don't have a support system, well, they should get on here, right? And be able to virtually meet people in that sense. So I'm definitely of the mind that VR should be much more social and not so focused on games, because I've met so many people who don't care about gaming at all, but they care about the people that they meet here, and they care about having a place to go, and they care about losing their home when all space is going away. So that's the stuff that people really do care about. And if people knew that it was an option, or if VR developers really focused on it, more and more people are positively actually looking to VR. So, like, gamers, I mean, we read all the stuff that came out after Allspace announced, right, that they're closing. But actually, in the medical field, they're doing so many great things, and they're responding so well. And again, I work with technology, and it took me years to convince our people, like, hey, we need a mobile-ready website. Okay, but it took me like 4 months to convince them that VR is really awesome. Like, that's it. And it was amazing. It blew my mind, because it is so amazing. And we really need to try to think of that in terms of, how does this help people? Like, how can we who have the know-how to develop help people? How do we who are in here, like, welcome new people? And how do we make the rules of how do you interact in a virtual world? How do we combat, harassment, that kind of stuff that we're just kind of like starting with right now. But that's always my plea, is to stop focusing so much on gaming. Of course, it's a big thing, right? I'm not saying ignore it completely, because gaming is a very big thing and that helps a lot. But I think that we're missing a market here that is yet to be explored. And I hope that more and more people get into exploring that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting that no matter what subject we end up talking about here, so often we come around to just going like, VR is the solution. Like, it's going to be the tool that's going to solve. And we go off in a bunch of different directions. And obviously we are, we're all here in virtual reality, so it's on our minds. So, like, maybe that's why we're always jumping to it. But man, it does seem like this special tool that could bring us all together. I mean, yeah, I think that once it's not a gaming thing, like I got into it, like the reason I heard about it was gaming. I didn't think about a social community. That wasn't like at the forefront of my mind. But now that, when I discovered VR chat, like, oh my God, this is the reason I have virtual reality. It's not to like go shoot, monsters or whatever. It's like hang out with people from all over the world and create like a new community. It's really powerful. It's great. All right. Oh, so we should, we talked about your show a little bit, but we should plug it. So like what time can people see you tomorrow?
Oh, so it's going to be here in VR chat. You guys have kindly helped me move my show over. It's called The Hive, and it is the buzz of whatever's going on. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about, oh no, Allspace went away. Where are we going to go? And also, Allspace announced that they're back. So a little bit of that is going to be here in VR chat, streamed in Allspace, streamed online on YouTube, and it'll be 7 p.m. Central Time. So that's 8 p.m. Eastern. You do the math, I suppose.
Oh, this is exciting that the communities are crossing over so much. Like I think I think that we might be streaming in Altspace right now. I think someone was trying to set that up. But like it'll be cool if, and then like shows in Altspace get streamed here, and we're slowly going to create one giant community, one big metaverse together. It's going to be great. Oh wait, do you have a final thought, McGills? Or are you just dancing around and celebrating the conclusion? I think you were just dancing. All right, so thank you, everybody. That's it. Thank you for coming. Now we got to have everybody come up on stage, do a big group picture. And so, what should we somehow theme this? Should we change into a special avatar to represent age? Like I don't know what that would look like. Right. Whatever, just be yourself.
Turn into a clock.
Back up a little bit, Cabbage. You've eaten like 3 people, I think.
Oh, I went in there purposely.
Okay.
VR generation. Cabbage generation.
One more.
I paid for it.
Cabbage generations.
Cabbage generation.
We gotta move left. Are you talking about like Zircon?